Okay, this is a BHTU microscope I picked up on eBay. This thing's been working pretty hard and needs some serious work. You can't tell by looking, but this focus mechanism is very stiff. First off, let's get the tag off of there. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this thing around, take off this lamp house. You grab it, pull it straight out, and if you can see, there's not any bulb in there, but you know, that's the least of our worries at this point. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the back cover off this thing. There's 4 M2 metric screws that have to come off, so that's what we'll do. By the way, the screwdriver I'm using, no markings on it, but this is a JIS screwdriver that I picked up from on Amazon. I would suggest you not try to work on a Japanese scope without these type of screwdrivers. It will not end well if you do. Okay, so what I need to do now is I need to pull this little gearbox out, if you can see that. The reason I want to do that is that will decouple the focus mechanism from the focus block on the other side, and it will let me see what kind of shape this thing's in, how much work it really needs. Yeah, you can't really see what I'm doing, but I'm taking out a couple 4 screws, or hex socket head cap screws, 2.5 millimeter screws. Take these 4 out and the whole gearbox comes out. Okay, that's the last of the screws. So if I reach in and pull it out, this is the gearbox. More about that later. So you can see inside there as I manually raise the focus block on the other side. You can see it through the hole where the gearbox used to be. If I turn this thing around, now we can see the sliding focus block here. If I lift it and drop it, you can see how it hesitates. It's a little sticky, a little gummy. That means this thing needs work. It means I need to disassemble and clean the sliding focus block. And while I'm at it, I'm going to totally tear down the coaxial focus. I'll also redo the nose piece turret. And also, this thing here is really stiff. It's going to need some work. So basically, it's kind of a worst case scenario that needs everything, and that's typically what I do with scopes. Is I tear them totally down and clean everything. Okay, the next step is with the lamp house removed, lay it back on its spine. And take a 4 millimeter hex wrench and remove the 4 screws, socket head cap screws that hold the electrical base to the unit. last one. Okay, now separate the electrical base. The easiest way to do that, lay it flat on the bench, grab the top of the arm and lift straight up. For now, I'm just going to set this aside, and if it needs any work, I'll deal with it later. One way or another, I'm sure I'll end up doing something with it. Okay, so here it is without the electrical base on it. If you look on the bottom, you will see there's a couple things here that are somewhat fragile, and therefore you need to make sure that you only lay this when you lay it on its feet, that it's on a clean surface so that you don't damage these components. But the next step is to take a 5mm wrench, remove these 4 cap screws here, and that will separate the pillar arm from the base. These are usually pretty tight, as you can see. That one was really tight. Okay, now I can get a little bit better grip on the wrench. Should have done that from the start. And one more up here. Okay. Now, as you can see, they're separate. So for now, I'm going to set this aside. And we'll work on this assembly here. Okay, now what I'm going to do before I start on the coaxial focus mechanism is I'm going to work on this piece here, get that done. So in order to do that, the first thing I need to do is to take out this little brass focus rack here, which is mounted onto the back side of the focus block. Take a 2.5mm metric hex tool and remove the 2 socket head cap screws that hold it in place. That's the easy part. And now the more difficult part is to fish the thing out of there. Let me grab a pair of pliers to make that just a little bit easier, because it will come out. And there it is. And if you take a look at that, you can see that maybe you can see that it's very greasy and totally needs to be cleaned before it goes back in. But now, next step, I'm going to tighten this up so this will lay flat. Next up is using the same 2.5mm metric tool to loosen this screw. There's 2 screws here that we loosen, 3 we take out. These 2 get loosened, these 3 get removed. Okay, and once those are loosened, proceed with taking these out. Now basically pull all that stuff out, although it would be a little easier, and I probably should have done this first, but it would be a little easier if I take out these little 2mm M2 metric screws that hold this trim piece in place, and take that out as well, just to get it out of the way so that it doesn't get damaged in the process, because it is pretty thin gauge aluminum. Screws. A little bit of finagling, it'll come out. It's filthy, needs to be cleaned, but that'll happen. Next thing I want to do is to put a paper towel here just to catch all the stuff that comes out and pull her out. So, there should be a total of 16 roller bearings. Okay, 2 of these little hard plastic spacer rods, one on each side, and these are all covered in grease and nasty and will need to be cleaned, obviously. Alright, now what that leaves behind, these 2 pieces, a couple of brass shims, and inside these pieces here there are some rails for the roller bearings. They're basically just held in place with stiff grease, so those have to come out. And they're out. So now this thing, leave these on here. These are the screws I loosened at first. And these are little barrel-shaped wedges that, when you tighten it down, expand this piece out so that you don't have any lateral play in the focus block. The next step is to basically clean all these up using the solvent. I'm going to use acetone on the metal. Anytime I clean plastic parts, I'll use like isopropyl alcohol or something that's not going to affect the plastic. I think I'm going to do that off camera. There's no reason for you guys to have to watch that. Okay, off camera I cleaned all those parts that came out of here, and I'll clean a few of them on camera so you can see how I do it. But first thing I'm going to do is take out this little trim piece. This is on some scopes. The majority of scopes probably do not have it, but I'm going to take it off just so I can get it out of the way so that I can clean the whole thing a little better. Got the little 2mm metric screws, and the piece comes out. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out these 4 guide rails. There's 2 here and 2 here, and once again these are held in with grease and nothing else. If I just move them out. Now what I'm going to do is put a little acetone on a paper towel and clean off all the old grease. Last one. Okay. Now, these grooves, these channels in the side where the rails came out of, they're filthy disgusting as well. So clean out the grease as best as you can get it. It's not the end of the world if you don't get it all. It doesn't really cause a problem, but it's definitely better if you can. I'll have some of these exposed. I'm going to try to clean some of this grime off the casting, off the arm casting. I'm going to try to clean some of that off just using alcohol. Definitely touching it. Some of the stubborn spots, I might try acetone if I can get that to come off. Wouldn't leave acetone in contact with the paint for very long. I think it eventually will cause problems, but in the short term it does not. Okay, now off camera I'm going to go ahead and clean up this casting as best I can just to make it look presentable. Be back. Okay, it's time to put this back together. If your scope had one of these little dust shields, don't forget to put it in now. Install it now or forever hold your peace. Because once it all goes together, you can't get this in. Okay, next step is to apply grease, heavy Dow 111 grease in both ends, both of these side channels. That will be, the purpose of that will be to hold the rails in place while we reassemble. Basically just to blow all the grease is all you need. Once you put the rails in, the grease, the excess squeeze out will thoroughly clean off so that that's not interfering with the action of the mechanism. Okay, now out of the 8 rails you've got, I'm going to grab the 4 long ones. These have a triangular shaped profile, so you need to put them in place in the channels with the hypotenuse of the triangle facing outward. Lay it in there. Press them firmly into place. Let all the grease squeeze out that wants to. Do the same thing in the other channel for the last 2 rails. Okay. Using dry cotton swabs, paper towels, whatever you got. Go in there and just rub out that excess grease. Same thing for this. Okay. Now that I've got the rails installed in the side channels, I need to put this stuff back together so that it's ready to go inside. So the rails go in here just in the same way that they go in the side channels in the arm, and that is put grease, heavy grease, in the channels. Okay, then take the shorter of the 4 rails. You've already installed the long ones here. The shorter ones go in here the same way, hypotenuse facing out. Put them in there as hard as you can. Press down hard. Okay, now in a similar fashion, take out all the excess grease. Okay, now take some Microscope 44L light grease. Put just a thin coating on all the rails. Okay, well, we've got those greased. Flip this guy over, add some heavy grease to the one surface, both ends, these brass shims. And hopefully we'll keep those in place during reassembly. Place those on this back surface of this block. One of them on the far side of these 3 holes, one of them on the front side. And clean away the excess grease. Grease out of the holes if there's any in there. Now, I think we're ready to start reassembling. Okay, I added a bunch of Moly 44L light grease, silicone based, and I'm just stirring these around so that the roller bearings are covered in grease. Let's get this stuff out of the way. Okay, now take a pair of tweezers, take 8 of these roller bearings and set them up here. First one standing upright, the second one laying down, again facing the camera, third one standing up, fourth one laying down. Take one of the cleaned off plastic spacer rods, lay that here, and place 4 more. One standing up, one laying down, one standing up. That one was a little stubborn. And one laying down. Let's get this grease off of there. Okay. So now, this piece, we've already greased this. This piece is ready to go. It sits in there on top of those, being careful not to disturb them. Just lay them in place. And now, of course, you have to hold this because it's going to try to fall. This piece goes in there, obviously, with the rails, facing the rails in this arm. And in that orientation, and they slide in there such that when those little barrel spacers clamp down on them, it will move this piece out and can be used to adjust, get rid of any side-to-side lateral play in the focus block. So anyway, carefully get that started, being careful not to knock those brass shims out of the way. And stand one up, lay one down, stand one up, lay it down, take the last spacer, carefully push those into the open channel there in between the rails. Okay, now while holding this in place, we do the same thing. Stand one up, lay one down, stand one up, lay one down. So now we push this whole thing, including these roller bearings, we push the whole thing in there. There's a screw hole here, needs to align with that screw hole there. And once we think we've got that, then we attempt to put the screw in using a M2.5 hex driver. Like we've got her to start, so once we do that, the thing's not going to fall out, so I can let go of it now. And I'm putting these in, but I'm not snugging them down yet. I'm just putting them loosely in place. Okay. Now, hold this so it doesn't fall. See if I can get the camera angle to work. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to tighten these two screws here, and that will expand the slide so that there's no lateral play. And what you would ideally like to do is tighten to the point where it starts to get a little grabby, and then loosen it up. And that way you'll know you don't have any more lateral play than you need. Once those are expanded out, then we can go ahead and tighten down these three screws, and we'll be ready to test it. So, move it up and down to distribute the grease through there, raise it all the way to the top, bring it down just a little bit, and let go, and it should fall just like that. Okay, time to put the trim piece back in place. Lay it in there, line up the holes, and then use a GIS screwdriver to put in these little M2 screws. I always put these 4 screws in, leave them a little bit loose until they're all 4 in place, and then go back and tighten them down. That way you don't bend the trim piece or whatever. It's just good practice. And we'll go back and snug them down. Once we've done that, for a focus block, we're just good to go. At this point, I'm going to put the base, filthy as it is, on here. Just to hold the thing in position. That way I can work on the coaxial focus while the thing is standing upright. And it's just a lot easier that way. So I'll use a 5mm Allen tool. And I'm really only going to put 2 of these screws in because I'm going to have to take it all off to clean this base again anyway. So I'll put the screws in. I'm not going to worry about trying to get the alignment perfect or anything else. I'll do that later. Okay, so I'll stand this up. Sticks a little at the top. That's normal. If you knock it loose, it'll fall. And that's acting way better than it was and should be fine.